Welcome to the Development Permit Panel meeting for today's date. What are we at, June 29th? On the panel today, we have Cecilia Sham. She's the General Manager of Community Safety. Peter Russell is our Director of Sustainability and District Energy. And I'm chairing today. I'm John Irving, General Manager of Engineering and Public Works. The panel is here to consider issues of form and character. We don't deal with use and density, so our questions and consideration will be limited to those issues of form and character. I will just have a couple more comments on that with the one agenda item we have, but moving to the agenda, first up, we have the minutes of the previous meeting on April 27th. Can I get a motion on those?
So moved.
Yeah. Cecilia, are you seconding? All in favor? Great. So the one item we have on the agenda today, development permit 219311059 for the property at 8888 number 6 Road. And I just wanted to comment relative to my opening remarks. This is somewhat unusual. I understand the consideration of the panel on this development permit is triggered by the encroachment of the proposed farm plate on the ESA. And in that sense, we would be here then to consider the merits of the staff recommendation based on the ESA issues and the compensation thereof. It wouldn't be our purview on the panel to consider the nature of the proposed home or farm building. That would be for further consideration through the building permitting process. So certainly staff, if they're here, correct me if I'm mistaken or off base on that, but I believe that's what we're here to consider. So with that in mind, happy to open the floor to the applicant to present to us anything you wish to present.
Okay. Hi, my name is Calvin Dang. I'm the owner and the farmer for this place, 8888 number 6 Road. And here we have our planner, Bob, here with me today to attend this meeting. To begin with, our ESA planner, Richard, here will start with the presentation. Go ahead, Richard.
Sure. Thanks, Calvin. Just as a point of clarity, it sounded there like there was a comment about the home plate itself encroaching into the ESA. That's not quite what we've got proposed. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear, I suppose. Let me see if this, oh no. My mouse has disappeared, sorry. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, let's see if it'll change. All right. So we were retained a couple of years back to do the environmentally sensitive area assessment and complete the ESA development permit exemption request for the farming practices. With the proposed home plate, it was originally moved because the City of Richmond guidance suggests that the home plates be placed as close to the edge of the property as possible. We requested a variance to move it into the property a little ways so that the access road that currently exists could be used for access to the farm building and the proposed home plate. But that was away from the RMA, not into the RMA. And the goal was to give us enough space to move the existing road, which does occur in the RMA, to move that out so that it could be restored and compensated. So the front area of the property is to be restored and compensated, and the roads to be removed. And I'll throw a picture up in a second. And so that home plate was debated by FSAC and approved, as I understand it. So the location, moving it into the property, was not considered a major issue. And it provides advantages for the agricultural purposes on the property. The alternative scenario was to maintain the house in compliance with Richmond's general guidance. But then in order to access the farm building, a second watercourse crossing would have been developed, and that seemed like a larger impact than just moving the farm plate. So what I mean, I suppose, is this little dotted line here should optimally butt up against the RMA to the west and the RMA to the south. And instead, we've moved it inside of the property to allow for that road access, as opposed to needing to build a secondary road access. Can you guys see my mouse? I'm not actually sure what you can see. Okay, good deal. As opposed to building a second crossing here to provide access to the farm building, because we wouldn't be able to build a road anywhere else. So there is currently a bit of roadway through here, through the RMA, that's going to be taken out and restored and revegetated as a compensatory measure. And then the other consideration, I guess, is the home plate itself. There's a 1,000 square meter home plate allowance. And in order to compensate for that impact, there's two scenarios outlined through the Richmond bulletins, I suppose. And one of them is that if you have a specific count, you can replace trees at a 1-to-1 ratio. We didn't have that because the previous landowner had cleared the land. So at 1,000 meters of land had been disturbed. And when that's the case, and when you've got no quantifiable metric, then the compensation strategy has to meet at least 1 meter to 1.5 meters squared of compensation. So for that 1,000 meters squared home plate, 1,500 meters squared would be required for compensation. Our original proposal had included compensation for the entire front of the property, which had been previously cleared and had a portion of the road on it, and extended over to this southwestern corner as well, and up through the edge of the residence. And that amounted to about 1,000 square meters. And we've extended the restoration as well to include 5 meters out from the RMA for the entire length of the property. And the purpose there is to maintain wildlife connectivity and to improve habitat through there. And it amounts to a total square footage of, I believe, 2,700 square meters, plus or minus a little bit. So that should exceed the compensation requirements for the city's bulletin. And then with that, in order to maintain it for sort of into the long term, so that farming practices don't encroach further, there's a proposed fence at 5 meters along that vegetated boundary. And the goal there is just that under the Right to Farm Act, there's in the provincial framework anyways, there's a fair bit of flexibility for farmers to push the limits near the edges of water courses, as long as they're not impacting water quality directly. And so finding ways to ensure that it's robust and maintained for the long term is an important consideration. And for that purpose, we've proposed the fencing, and Calvin's agreed to fence and restore that entire area. So that should be a compensation in exceedance of the basic Richmond requirement, and it should allow for some confidence that it will remain in place in perpetuity. And I suppose that's really all I've got. So the whole purpose of the compensation is to ensure that we've maximized ecosystem services on site. The ones that were previously potentially impacted by the original clearing of the property are primarily around water quality and around wildlife connectivity, because there's nice patches of vegetation southeast of this property and northwest of this property. And so by revegetating along the riparian areas, we provide a bit of a corridor access in the long term. At the moment, a lot of that's already been cleared. And so the revegetation efforts are hopefully to restore that habitat as well. And I think that's sort of the synopsis. So the bullet lists that I have here on this slide, these are the intended objectives of compensation through the City of Richmond's strategies for environmentally sensitive areas, for upland forested habitats. And so our target has just been to hit each of these benchmarks, and I think that we've done that. So this is sort of the proposed restoration plan as it sits. All those little colored dots along the southern RMA, those are actual plants and the density according to a planting plan that we've put together for Mr. Dang. The big purple polygons are where native plant seeding will occur, and those polygons along the front as well. These areas are going to be revegetated with trees based on a replanting plan that was put together by PNG Landscape Architects. And it adheres to the City of Richmond's recommended setback or recommended compensation strategy for riparian restoration. So there's a few different strategies you can put in place, and this is one of them. And this is the proposed development overall. So this dark green or this bright green area here, this is a portion of the road that needs to be removed from the RMA. And then the road itself will exist throughout the front of the property. And then these areas with the trees marked in here, this aligns with PNG's restoration strategy and the compensation plan. Along this side at the moment, because it's the proposed septic, or because the proposed septic field is right there, we don't really want to plant too many trees right adjacent to it that may impact the field lines. So this area has been proposed primarily for native reseed and planting. And then again, the top 5 meters all the way along is going to be revegetated for the southern duration of the property. This is the planting plan that was proposed by PNG. Oops, looks like I've only got the second portion of the property. Oh no, they just abut each other. So the species composition for the shrubs are embedded through these little letter codes. And so the entire front of the property would be populated according to the shrub composition. And then this is on that southwestern portion south of the existing driveway. So this little patch here. And that's really all we have on the compensation strategy and ESA concordance and compliance. Is there any other specific information that folks are after?
Can somebody point out the fence, the proposed fence line where it starts and stops?
It's this green line right here.
Okay.
And then it will also extend up through here, and there is fencing that runs along this dotted line with a gate for the access from the roadway.
Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify before we get into questions from the panel, that's a conclusion of your presentation? Is there any?
That's all I have. I think is there a specific piece of the puzzle that's missing that everybody's interested in?
We'll certainly get into that, but thanks, Mr. Rothberg. So yes, do we have questions from the panel then?
I guess as a question to staff, this is a bit of an unusual one. So as the chair pointed out, we're not going to deal with form and character or the use of the development. So the question is that the proposed compensation, is that considered an appropriate amount of compensation based on staff's evaluation?
Yes, through the chair, excuse me. The compensation, and just to clarify, it is for the removal of about 1,000 square meters of ESA to develop the proposed residential uses, as well as to restore some of the ecological function. So as the applicant noted, it is a bit higher than the base that would be aimed for in terms of trying to ensure no net loss. So there is a net gain in this case in order to compensate for those different aspects.
Sorry, maybe Mr. Bother, you could just stop sharing because I can only see one person at a time here. That would be great. Thank you. Just a question as well. So the fence line basically following the 5 meter setback. Is that correct?
So there's two RMAs, one on the western side of the property. There's a ditch at the front there and a riparian management area associated with it. That one will have a fence at the 15-meter line. On the southern RMA, there will be a fence at the 15-meter line for the duration of the residence, and then it will go down to a 5-meter protective fencing for the remainder of the property. So this, in that image, when, I'm sorry, is it Cecilia? When she posed the question, there's that bright green line along the restored vegetation on the southern RMA. That's at the 5-meter setback for the southern boundary. But the inner edge of all the purple lines for the native plant seeding, all of that will be fenced at the 15-meter threshold.
And so what happens between the 5-meter setback and the 15-meter setback?
I think we've got a proposed extended fencing to connect the two.
So, but their plantings are in there, or?
That area is going to be reseeded with a native seed blend.
Being what you outlined in terms of, so that's the salmonberry, or?
It's the approved seed mix. I don't remember offhand, I'm afraid, but it's a blend that's recommended through the City of Richmond Restoration Strategy.
Okay.
Sorry, you're talking about turf, not the seed mix. You're talking about the turf section, correct?
The yellow section that is also green hatched is what I'm looking at. Is that the section you're talking about? So north of the fencing, there is a whole area that runs along the south side of the property, so the top edge. So that is not fenced, and it's a mixture of some sort of seeding. And so what, I guess maybe I'll jump in, and John, correct me if I'm wrong and I misunderstand your question, is what is there to prevent that section outside of the fencing to be disturbed?
Nothing at the moment. And there's no specific regulation that would dictate that it couldn't be farmed in the future. So the concern is that if we propose a fence at a 15-meter setback through that area, is that because there's no specific rule that says you're not allowed to farm on ALR closer to the stream than that, you're exempt from the wrapper setbacks and from the riparian setbacks in general. By putting up a fence along that line, we run the risk of having it removed at some later stage by some future farmer. Because unless it's all put into covenant, in which case the landowner loses a fairly substantial amount of potential farmable land, there's not really a legal framework for that to be protected in perpetuity. And because it turns into quite a large amount of area, we run the risk of having somebody feel it's economically viable to pull the fence out and farm it at a later date. So to discourage that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, yet that is part of our ESA compensation that we're counting in now. So up to the 15 meters, part of the ESA compensation, no?
No, that's not included in the area.
Okay, so the ESA compensation is just the middle layer with all the little dots where
That's
the planting is. And then you're proposing like a perimeter seeded area that is in addition to your compensation area that is required of this project.
Correct.
As a transition.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, just to clarify that further, then that area is not going to be used for farming purposes or anything. It's just a seeded transition area.
They can use it for farming, is what they're trying to tell us. There's no rule to say that they cannot.
Yeah, currently it's my understanding that the farm plan doesn't include that portion of the property, but that there is an intention to farm it in the future. Is that correct, Calvin?
Yeah, Richard, I was trying to raise a question. I wasn't quite following exactly what everybody is after in here. Would you please pull out that the drawing with the fence and show us where you pointing at, please? Thank you.
So this area will be fully revegetated with native shrubs and trees and fenced off.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and currently this area is to be, this area here is excluded from the current farm plan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. No, okay, now I follow. Yeah, that's just not going to be farmed anyway. It's already been grow a seed with grass and that's pretty much set the way it is. Because at the back portion, the 2/3 of the back portion is already grown with blueberries, and we left that green portion as a little, little distant from the RMA, so not to disturb it. It's just all grown now. I think it's pretty much already set the way it is. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Further questions from the panel?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm your fencing type, and if it's intended to have ability for wildlife to pass through it at some level. So what is the proposed fencing style?
That's a good question. Thank you. I had a chat with George. Well, to begin with, I don't really agree with the fence, but with the planning, they really want me to have that fence here just to make sure we, things are blocked off from farming and all other activities. I was talking to them. What kinds of fence can we use? He said there are different sources and different style of fence you use. We came to agreement of split well fence at about 3-4 feet high. So this way we make sure there's nobody go and disturb the RMA area where we plant them, all the trees and shrubs where we need it, and in the same time we can probably provide care for the new plant by irrigation them and de-weeding them. During the first 2-3 years is very important for them. So if we have a really huge fence really tight with wires and everything that we cannot go to, it's really hard for us to maintenance the new trees and try to take care of them with irrigations and that. Because with irrigations, farmer they know rodent really like to chew on them very often, and if they chew on them, and if we don't know anything about if water leaks, and that's not good for them. So I think me and ESA planners from the city, we agree with split well fence.
Yeah, I think the split wood would allow for wildlife passage, so I think that's what I was looking for ultimately. Yeah, and then I had a question, Mr. Chair, regarding the level of vegetation, and it's on page 29. There's a good list on the compensation. And I guess maybe just if you could speak to, I know the intention of the schematics that you propose, that you're showing aren't planting plans per se, but some of these are very big trees. There's 35 Doug firs and 14 big leaf maples, which are, they have the potential to be very large, mature trees after a period of time. I think that's very positive ultimately. However, how will they be clustered? How will they prevent, support each other in terms of wind protection? So what is the high level thinking at this stage around those issues?
Yeah, it's a great question. At this stage, the idea is to broadly speaking, disperse the plants in a way that's not going to impact long-term fencing too much so that it doesn't wreck anything, which means it will probably have small clusters of trees fairly well spaced out, as opposed to one tree every 10 or 15 meters, or as opposed to one cluster of trees and then shrubs everywhere else. I think we'll probably try to keep them in smaller groups of 2 or 3 larger trees in a tight area, and then spaced out subsequent from that.
Okay, maybe staff can take it under advisement at the next stage, BP, that landscaping requirements, address the issues of, trees falling and clustering such that it doesn't impede farming, but have survivability.
And staff, can you just remind me what is the monitoring period and letter of credit for the ESA area?
Yes, through the chair. There is a monitoring. Basically, the applicant will be required to, through a qualified environmental professional, have monitoring ongoing for 5 years. And there is an amount that is secured. My apologies, just lost track. There is security collected as part of that for those plantings. Maybe actually I could ask Mr. Benya to articulate that amount if you don't mind.
Of course, through the chair, the amount is around $47,000. I believe it's $47,665 that would be collected for landscaping and compensation for that 5-year monitoring period.
And through the chair, a follow-up question on that. The monitoring is being done by the qualified professional, and are there going to be regular reports to the city?
Yes, through the chair, there is regular reporting, I believe, on an annual basis. My apologies, my computer has just frozen on me. There are regular reports through the qualified environmental professional. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions from the panel?
Not for me, Mr. Chair.
No, good. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comments? Any members of the public here that wish to comment?
We have no registered speakers from the public, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And any letters on this?
None, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll just move to our panel deliberation. So I think certainly an extensive planting plan has been identified here, and I think the clarification on the questions was adequate. So with that, I think I'll be prepared to support the staff recommendation on this. I don't know if there's other comments from the panel.
Yeah, I would just add something. I think the site has an extensive history, not necessarily to do with the current owner. So I appreciate the effort that the current owner has put into, do the compensation. But the key thing is going forward is great to plan all the compensations. And, I want to make sure that we're not having discussions 2-3 years from now and saying, how come it's not being taken care of. So I'll put that into advisement, which is why my questions on, the maintenance and the reporting to the city. If you're willing to put this amount of money and effort into it, I sincerely hope that it will be upcapped and see it mature as a true replacement. So.
The only thing I'd add, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I think there's a lot of great opportunities for these plants to be quite supportive of farming through pollination, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of benefit for following the planting plan, and certainly the monitoring period will ensure that.
Excellent. So we have a staff recommendation. Can I get a move?
Move the recommendation.
Seconded.
All those in favor? So moved. Thank you for the presentation and your project. Good luck with the completion and the planting.
Thank you. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, you're welcome. Moving on with our agenda. I don't believe we have any new business. The date of the next meeting is currently July 13th, 2022.
Chair.
Smith, yes.
Sorry, if I may, Mr. Chair, if the council should choose, you can go ahead and cancel that meeting. We do not have any items for the July 13th meeting. We would need a resolution and vote from the panel to do so.
Certainly. Can I have a motion?
Move the motion.
Yeah, seconded.
All in favor? All right, so that is canceled. We'll see you in the fall.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.